So once we define the application, once we onboard the application in Sailpoint, we will be doing the aggregation. Once we do the aggregation, all the data from the target system will be pulled into Sailpoint. Okay, suppose that you will not be able to see all the data in the identity warehouse, in the identity cube. Okay, so only the display name will be visible. Rest all the values will be remain empty. Okay, why? Because Sailpoint has some defined attributes and you are passing some set of attributes. For example, I am passing like email. Okay, email is a attribute present in Sailpoint. In your target system, it is there like email address or email ID. Okay, so how Sailpoint will understand the email needs to store the email address of the target system. Email is one attribute, email address is another attribute. So how Sailpoint will be understanding to store that same data into the same attribute, identity attribute. So for that purpose only, we have to configure this mapping, identity mapping. So how it goes like is, you can see here, these are all the default attributes, whichever are marked in red over here. The one below the line, whatever that you see are the extended attributes. So once you have done with the aggregation, you will be seeing only this username, but not the remaining attributes. So remaining attributes, we need to map them manually for the authoritative application. So you can see here the identity mappings. So employee ID with employee ID, first name with first name, last name with last name, email address with email ID. So whatever the values that you wanted to map, like you need to tell Sailpoint which attribute value needs to store under which attribute value. Like that, you need to tell this to Sailpoint. So this is the configuration UI. So you can see when you go to the identity mapping, this kind of a screen will be visible to you. So you can just open that particular attribute name. You can give these details, and in the bottom you have the source mapping, right? Under the source mapping, you will be mapping the attribute. So currently I have two applications. Currently I have two authoritative applications that I am gonna onboard. So in those two authoritative applications, we have region attribute, and that region attribute we are gonna map with a Sailpoint region attribute. And these are like searchable, multi-valued, and group factory columns are there, right? Searchable means this particular attribute will act like one of the filter condition. If you want to search for any data in Sailpoint, we need some filters, right? So this would be coming like one of the filter condition. Multi-valued, if this particular attribute has multiple values. Yesterday I explained you, right? The multi-valued field. The same way here also you can enable that checkbox. Now group factory. So what is meant by group factory, and for region why I have selected the group factory. So group factory means like if the group of identities are residing in one particular attribute. For example, region is such kind of an attribute where the group of identities will be located in one particular region, right? So first name, last name, we cannot call it as a group factory. Why? Because number of IDs will not be stored under first name, right? Whereas number of people will be stored under one department, one region. Manager ID also you can call it as a group factory because number of employees will be reporting under one manager, like that. So searchable, used for correlation analysis, analytics and reporting, etc. Multi-valued, user may belong to one or more cost center. Group factory, support dynamically generated groupings of identities based on the attribute. Example, all users in this region become a group. Used to filter views include the actions. Refresh only identities from a particular region. Okay, let's continue. So next is the aggregation and refresh task. So just a 2 points to explain you. Aggregation task helps you to pull the data from the target system to Sailpoint. So when you run the aggregation task, it means you're pulling some data from the target system into Sailpoint. Next, the refresh task. So the purpose of refresh task is any kind of modifications that you are making to an identity and that needs to be updated into the Sailpoint database, then you would be running a refresh task. Okay, that is the purpose of these two tasks. So purpose, read the data from application to account attributes. For the identity refresh purposes, update the identity attributes from the application account attributes through calculation and through calculations with that. So this is the identity cube creation process. So whatever that we have explained till now, you can see in these 6 points. So starting with authoritative resource contains accounts, application or connector defines schema and how to connect it to the resource, aggregation task runs, connector reads the accounts, identity IQ creates authoritative identity cubes, and finally identity mappings define the creation of identity attributes. Identity attributes, you know, right? First name, last name, email. So these are all termed as identity attributes. Next, managing identity user access. So this includes the capabilities. So when you just click on this user rights, you will be seeing some number of capabilities over here. Whatever the capability that you wanted to assign, you can just assign it. So based upon the capability, the users will be seeing some kind of a tabs. As a system administrator, you will be able to see all the options. We technically call them as quick links. Okay, so all the quick links, the administrator can view it. But if you don't have any capability, only home and my work, these two things only you can see. So these are all the capabilities, list of capabilities that you have for selection. See, for a normal user, only home and my work, these two things only will be visible. That's a default page for every user. Next, scoping. So scoping is something like restricting the access. So for example, I belong to a development team and the finance team is there. So I should not be able to view the entitlements for requesting a financial team. Okay. So finance applications entitlements, I should not see, neither I should not see, nor I can raise a request for as well. So that is kind of a restriction. So you can see Bill is authorized to application 1 and application 2. John is authorized to application 3, whereas Bob is authorized to all the 3 applications. So here Bill cannot access application 3 data, John cannot access application 1 and 2 data. So that is the intention of scoping. Next, work groups. So these are all like kind of a small topics only, one-time configurations kind of you will be doing it. So work groups is something you will be putting some group of identities acting like a owners. Okay. So just like when you are creating any application or creating any object in Sailpoint, you need to put an owner for it. Okay. So generally there will be only one drop down to select the owner from the list of identities. Okay. So rather selecting one single user, your client may approach you saying you have multiple owners for that one object, or for that one application, there are 5 different owners. So in such a case, though you have only one drop down over there, how do you add 5 identities over there? You cannot add it, right? There comes a concept called work group. Okay, so work group also treated like an identity only. So in that identity, you will be adding some group of identities. For example, 5-6 identities. If you want to add it, you can just add it, and that work group will be acting like a one unique identity that you will be selecting from the drop down. The application owner drop down, you can select this work group, and all those 5-6 people, whatever that you have added, right, those people will become the owner for that application. So that is the intention of creating the work groups in Sailpoint. A lot of scenarios or a lot of situations in your real time, you may be creating this work groups only. So you will be going to set up groups and work groups tab. You will be able to create the work groups over here. And this is a UI screen for work groups. I'll be explaining you again how that UI looks like and how to create a work group practically. And these are all some things like manually, if you do it, it will be error prone, slow, and tedious. Automatically, by using some rules also you can implement by writing a creation rule, customization rule, you can implement these functionalities. So now to create the applications, you are supposed to go to applications and application definition. So as of now, if you want to check the identities, you can just go to identities and identity warehouse. You will be seeing only one identity, that is administrator identity, with which we have logged in. So now I'm just creating an applications. So we have, as per the project, we have 2 authoritative applications to be configured. One contains employee data, the other contains the contractor data. Okay, since both are the working employees or physical identity only, right? So those are stored in the HR database. So we are referring to the HR database to pull the data into Sailpoint. So you can see a warning message since there are no applications configured now. You can see a warning here like no authoritative applications defined in the system and all identities will be marked uncorrelated. Okay, so mandatorily you should have the authoritative applications because you without the physical data, whatever the entitlements or uncorrelated, non-authoritative applications that you configure also there is of no use. Okay, so let's start with configuring the authoritative applications. Click on add new application. Give a name. So before giving a name, I'll just show you my target system data. So open this SP admins home, implementer training, data, and you can see here auth employees.csv, auth contractors.csv. So these are the two files that contains our employee data. So you can see this particular data. See, these are our users, HR data, which is being stored. Okay. You can see employee ID, first name, last name, manager ID, full name, email, department, region. So these are all the identity attributes, we call it as. Okay. And this many identities that we are going to now onboard into Sailpoint. So this file will be considered as a target resource. And the application that we are creating is a Sailpoint application. So now we are onboarding the target system data into Sailpoint by creating an application. So give a name. So first application name, I'm just giving like HR employee. Owner admin, I'm giving. Revoker. I'm giving the owner as admin. Select one. You can just select the delimited file connector. Once you select the connector only, the page gets loaded and the configuration details will be coming in. See, the page got loaded and the remaining fields have been populated. Now select this application as the authoritative application because this is an authoritative application and just marking this. Now go to configuration. So here in the configuration, first is the settings part. So you need to give the whatever the required settings for this delimited file connector you're supposed to configure them. So for the delimited file connector, it will be expecting the file path where exactly that physical file is being there. That location you need to put it over here. So let me take that. Properties. Take this location. Paste it here along with that file name. Done. Delimiter is a comma. File has column head in the first line. Done. So why I am putting this delimiter comma is a CSV file. It's separated by a comma separated values. Next file has column header in the first line. If you don't select this checkbox, what would happen is Sailpoint will be considering this employee ID also one identity. Okay, if you want to skip that first line, we will be explaining Sailpoint that file contains first line as a header. Next, you have some options like filtering, merging, and iteration partition, right? So filtering, what does filtering means? So filtering means if you want to filter some data from the given sheet, okay? For example, number of lines to skip, if I want to put 3, okay? So in your data, if sometimes when you are pulling this data from the database, you will be seeing some variables like sysadmin, some kind of information that will be passed along with this data. So if you want to skip those 3 lines, you can put the filter conditioners. It will not consider the first line. Remember why? Because we already explained Sailpoint that first line is the header. Okay. Hence it skips the first line and it will start from the second, third, and fourth like that. Next, what we have filter empty, we will be selecting this checkbox. Okay. So filter empty means like it will be already selected. Why? Because any kind of a spaces between these lines. So that should be ignored. That is the intention. Next, comment character. So comment character means like if you wanted to, for example, if you have this data, the same kind of an chunk values are there in between. in between your records, this kind of a junk data is being done. Then in this case, you are supposed to request your client to add a special character. Like for example, hash I'm adding. Like this, you can request your client whichever the lines are, because they may remove it, or if they need some for commenting purposes, if they may need it also. In that case, you can request them to put it a special character before the lines which are required. Okay, now what we can do while we are pulling the data, we can just remove this number of lines also, and you can add this hash mark. What would happen wherever, whichever records contains or starts with the hash symbol, those records will be eliminated, will not be pulled. Lastly, filter string. So filter string is kind of a filter condition where you can filter out based upon some condition, like region. For example, region equal to Americas. So region equals to Americas. So what would happen? People whoever are part of region Americas, those identities will be excluded. Those identities won't be pulled into Sailpoint. Same way for location equal to Austin. So those people who are residing in Austin, those identities will not be pulled into Sailpoint. So that is how the configurations of filtering goes like. Because a lot of cases we are supposed to filter the data if the data is not given to you properly. But remember one thing, if it's a small or single minor mistake also, as a developer, we should not do any kind of a changes. Any change that should come from the app owner only. If any changes are needed, you should revert back to the app owner saying these are the changes that are to be made. Okay, but we should not make any certain changes. So that's all. So in my file, there are no filters. I'm just removing everything.
So
Next, coming to merging. Yeah.
Quick question. What happens if you don't put any filters?
Nothing will happen. I'm not putting any filters right
now. Oh, okay.
Every data will be filled.
So the filters like they come as requirements, or?
Sorry, filters?
The filters, when you put filters, like when you choose to put filters, they come, it's per requirements, right?
Yeah, it's on the requirement only. As I just given you some scenarios, right? Okay. If you see certain scenarios, then you would be using filters. If they, in my current data, everything is looking absolutely fine. There is no filters needed. But in certain situations, I explained you the situations, right? So if you see certain situations, then filters are needed.
Okay. Okay. And for the delimited, like if there is like a pipeline, like that's what we should put in the configuration, a pipeline. Okay.
Okay. Next is a merging. So merging I'll not be explaining over here, because merging we generally configure for the non-authoritative applications. Okay. So there I'll be explaining about the merging. So iteration partitioning, generally it will be automatic only, but we have large number of data like 10,000, 20,000 records are there. Then if you want to partition them while you are aggregating, like only aggregate 2,000 identities, only aggregate 3,000 identities at a time. Like you are partitioning the data all at a time, or splitting the data one after the other. So if you can enable manually define, you can define it. For example, 10,000 records are there. If you want to split it into 5 aggregations, kind of put it 5. So 2,000 records will be pulled at once. Again 2,000, again 2,000. Like that, the data would be pulled. So as of now, I'm putting as automatic only, and I'm leaving it. Next, go to schema over here. You can see the settings is done, right? Now I just went to schema. So in the schema, you will be configuring that identity attributes. So how do we get the data? First of all, click on this discover schema attributes button. Once you click on discover schema attributes button, and if you have given the file path properly, you will be able to see all the attributes listed. And among these attributes, we have cost center attribute that contains multiple values that I shown you in the yesterday's session also, right? So cost center is one attribute that has multiple values in it. If you want to check it out also, I can show you over here. See, employee ID only one. First name, last name, but you can see the cost center data. It is enclosed with double quotes and multiple values are there. That's why you need to observe the data. So this is a cost center. I'm marking it as a multi-value field and save it. Done. Post this. Next, you are supposed to configure the header. Okay. In the header, already this native object type will be populated. You are supposed to configure this identity attribute and display attribute. So identity attribute is the primary value we know, right? It's a unique value. So that we can just store the employee ID. We can tell the identity attribute as employee. How about the display attribute? Any kind of a name. So I'm just taking like full name as a display attribute. Done. Now, if you want to preview your data, how your data looks like, if you want to see, you can click on this preview button. So the first 10 values will be visible for you. Okay, first 10 records will be visible. So though you have 1,000 records or 10,000 records also, the first 10 records only will be visible for your just observation purpose. If this data is not visible properly or only a few records are visible, then you must again reconfigure, check what went wrong, and again see the preview. First 10 records should be absolutely fine and visible to you. Next. So this is done. Next thing, correlation part. So we are supposed to do the manager correlation, but not right now. We will be doing it after we do the identity mapping. Next, we are going to learn about the rules. So I'm going to write a creation rule for this application. So creation rule, we are going to write, or like we are going to set a default password to which would be applicable to all the identities. So how we can write it is, you can click on this small button over here. It will open an editor. In that you will be writing your piece of code. So I'm going to import a package, import Sailpoint dot object dot identity. So in this only you will be able to set the password. It's just a two-liner code, nothing much complicated. So I'm importing a packages. Post to that, I'm going to set the password. Set password is one of the method, and we are doing in the variable identity. So you can just type it like identity dot set password. And you can pass the password. In the double quotes, you can just pass it like, for example, I'm gonna give it the password as alpha. So I'm just giving like alpha as the default password for all the identities. So this is the piece of code that I have just written. So rule name, I'm just giving like password rule. And save it. Done. Once you have saved it, select the rule. Don't forget to select the rule. Select the rule, scroll down and save it. So just go to setup, tasks. You are going to create the aggregation task and execute it. So click on this new task, account aggregation, select it. So give a name. So what I'm going to do is for both the applications, I'm creating one aggregation only, and I can combine both the applications, like scan both the applications in one task. So I'm just giving a heading called HR data aggregation. Then scroll down a bit, select the application that you want to scan. I can either select one by one, two different tasks also you can create it, or in one task also you can pull both the applications data. Okay, both are fine. And you will be seeing a lot of checkboxes over here. So based upon your requirement, you will be selecting certain checkboxes. You can get the information when you click on this help button, when you just hover your mouse on the help buttons. But the recommended checkboxes are like two checkboxes that we will be selecting. So those are detect deleted accounts, because any kind of an options when we have requested an access, those gets deleted, right? So those should not be coming again for the request. So detect deleted accounts and disable optimization of unchanged accounts. So these are the two checkboxes that which are recommended to select. If you don't select it also, there is no harm. If you don't select any checkbox over here and click on save and execute also, there is no harm in it. But these are just recommended checkboxes for maintenance purpose. So scroll down, click on save and execute. Done. Once this is being done, let's wait for the task result. So it is done, right? You can just open the task result. You will be seeing how many identities got pulled. You can see 2 applications got scanned, total account scanned 229, identities created 229. Okay, this is how you can understand. Now, if you just go to identity warehouse, yes.
If you mind, Sasha, why did I just have a little bit of confusion? Why did you use 2 authoritative application?
Just as a project that I have designed like this way. It may be 1 authoritative or 2, just because people were asking like, is that only 1 authoritative application only can be onboard, can we not onboard other? So based upon those questions only, we had designed the project in this such way.
Based on my own understanding, like any organization has only 1 authoritative source of data.
Yes, yes. In the real time, most of the projects that you see, it will be only 1 authoritative application.
So you're using this as an example.
Correct. Because people should not go in an assumption like mandatory only 1 authoritative application only can be onboarded, should not be an assumption, right? So it can be multiple applications, multiple authoritative applications also. It purely depends upon how we get the data. So currently I have 2 target systems where we had to create 2 different applications.
But if we have 2 or more authoritative applications, wouldn't it be like a mismatch of information of data?
It won't be a mismatch, right? Because the data will be completely different. Employees, employee data will be there. Contractors, contractor information will be there, right?
Okay.
All these 229 are the unique identities.
All right. So in the case of contractors and full-time employees. Okay.
Yes, contractors and full-time employees.
Okay, I got it.
This project has been designed in that way.
All right.
Generally, you can also club all these identities into one single file also. That gives us only 1 authoritative approach. Either of the way.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
So if you see this data, this particular identity, if I open it, you can see only the username. But what about the first name, last name, email, manager, everything is empty. Now what we are supposed to do? We are supposed to do the mapping, identity mapping. So for that, you need to go to settings, global settings. You can see an option called identity mapping. Configure the identities that are managed in identity ID. So click on that. So you can see these 2 errors. If you remember, these 2 errors only came in when we are doing the installation of the tool. We would be defining them over this place and these errors will be removed. Okay. So you can see, click on this display name first. First, we will be configuring the default Sailpoint attributes. Post that, we will be configuring the extended attributes. So you can see the display name over here. Scroll down a bit, you will be seeing source mapping. Click on add source. Select the application. Select the corresponding attribute. I selected the display name, right? So display name means full name, you can select it. Add it. Like we are just mapping, we are just telling Sailpoint what data needs to be stored under what value. Full name. That's it. So you should be careful enough to select these options, because sometimes people may mistakenly select the attribute for same applications twice. That may be also a possibility. If you have done some such kind of mistakes, you are supposed to click on delete sources, select that wrong one that you have selected, and you can delete it and again you can reconfigure. Okay, that you can do it. So I'm just saving it for now. Next, email. So like that, one by one attribute you are supposed to map it. Scroll down, add source, add the application, add the attribute, add it. If you had one application, only one application you would have added. Since I have two applications, I had to map to two applications. That is the intention. First name with first name.
So is there any other way like to do them like to automate this?
No, generally like it's a one-time operation, right? So initially when you're onboarding the authoritative application, you have to do it manually for how many attributes that you have. So those many times you are supposed to do it. So group factory, I'm selecting for this particular attribute. Why? Because group of people will be active, group of people will be inactive. Considering that, we are marking this attribute as a group factory attribute. This is a very easy exercise. Like hardly it won't take 5 minutes for you to map all the attributes. Once you have added, done. Rest all the other hundreds of applications you create, also the same data will be considered. So, manager attribute is defaultly a group factory. We don't need to change anything. Save. Done. We have done with the default Sailpoint attributes. Now we are going to work on the extended attributes. So starting with this employee ID status, that will be duplicate. So click on add new attribute in the bottom. So type the values. So whatever the value that we have given in the configuration, if you remember that XML configuration that we have made while we are doing the installation, right? So that attribute only we need to give it. So it was like EMP, capital I and small d. Here you can just give it like your friendly display name, employee ID. Next, I am marking it as a searchable. Only for the extended attribute, you will be seeing this searchable field. For other default attributes, you did not see this searchable field. Why? Because those are defaultly searchable. So by selecting these options, what would happen also, I'll be telling you. So I'm just selecting this searchable, scroll down, add the source. Add the employee ID, add it. Add the contractor, add it. Save. See, one error is lost. Next one is the status. The status column is a tricky part. Why? Because there is no status column or status attribute at all in our data. This is one example for you. So status is a complete new attribute we don't have in our data. You can see this list of attributes. Do you see any status? No, right?
What exactly is the status? Is it the state of the identity or?
I'll tell you. So I'm introducing this status as a new attribute, differentiating employees and contractors. So status I'm marking as employee and other status as contractor. So employees will be considered as employee status. Contractors will be assigned with a contractor status to differentiate them. You getting?
Yeah, yeah.
So that is the intention. I'm introducing a new attribute. So this is also a possible way. So I'm marking it as a searchable field, and also I'm marking it as a group factor, because group of employees will be marked under one status, group of contractors will be marked under one.
So if you introduce a new attribute, there is no nomenclature requirement, like, like alphanumeric, capital. It can be anything in the
Yes,
name that you create.
you
Okay.
can put it, but we already defined this status in the XML file, right? You remember that there I have given in everything in lowercase status. And
Okay.
generally remember, this attribute names will be like camel case. The lowercase will be, it starts with the lowercase. Okay. For example, status attribute is there. So like this, it will be there. This is a camel case. Yeah. So next, add source. So if you just select by selecting the application, you won't be seeing the status attribute over here. Then what you are supposed to do? So instead of selecting this application attribute radio button, you will be selecting this application rule, and you are supposed to write a rule over here. So just it's a small one-liner rule. We are returning that value. Okay. See, returns attribute value. You can see here, right? So returns or return is employee. Close the brace and semicolon. Some employee status rule. Save it. Select that. This is for employee data. Add it. Now for contractor again. Select the application. Return contractor.
Return is a command in Sailpoint, just to recall the attribute.
No, it's not a command in Sailpoint. It's Java command only. If you are returning some values to be printed, so we use this return statement. It's Java programming and not related completed Sailpoint to that. This is a bean shell scripting generally we call. So as I told you, right, syntactically bean shell scripting will be a Java program. Contractor role. And I recommended everyone who wanted to move as a developer role, just start learning the Java programming parallelly while you are learning the Sailpoint. So I'm just saving it. Contractor role, add it. So done with selection, right? Scroll down and save it. This is being done. Now I have few more attributes. I'll be adding 2 attributes as of now, and I'll close it. Remaining, you can just take it as a homework and complete for the remaining attributes. So I'm just adding like region now. So region could be a group factory. So if you select group factory, automatically it will be searchable as well. So select the application and select the attribute region. Add it. Add source. Select the application. Select the attribute region. Add it and then save it. One last attribute, that is a department attribute I'm going to add, but you can just continue with adding location, job title, cost center. 3 more are there. You can just take it as a homework. It's there in the section, and whatever the things that I am practically doing it over here, everything is present in the section 1 document. You can follow the steps over there as well. Either you can follow the recording or you can follow the steps that are mentioned in the section 1 document. So attribute name, department. So I'm not selecting anything for department as of now, just adding the value, mapping the value.
Can we go back anytime and make this attribute a searchable or group factory?
Yes, we will be doing. That is the reason I'm not making anything for this department. There will be a situation where we will be working upon a custom workflows. At that time, I will be coming back to this department to change some values. Okay, I'm selecting contractor only again. Self-employed. Department, add it and save it. Done. So valid these attributes. So remaining 3 attributes are the location, job title, and cost center. So location, you can directly add it with the 2 applications. Job title is present only for employee data. So you will be selecting only employee application, not the contractor application. Remember. Cost center, you will be selecting all the 3 checkboxes. It is a multi-valued, it is a group factory, it is a searchable. All the 3 checkboxes you will be selecting, and you will be selecting both the applications. So that's how you will be configuring the remaining 3 attributes. Now I have done with the identity mapping, right? The next step is we are supposed to do the manager correlation, which we kept on hold, right? So open the application. Go to the correlation. Scroll down. Manager correlation. Select the manager ID equals to the identity attribute employee. Yesterday I explained about the manager correlation and the same configuration that I have done. Same thing with the contractor also. Application attribute manager ID equals to the save. Done. Once you are done with all these kind of configurations, we are supposed to refresh the identities. So currently with these configurations, no data will be auto-populated over here. We are supposed to refresh these identities. Hence, we are supposed to run a task. What is that task? It's identity refresh cube task or refresh identity cube task. You can see, just right click on this task. It's an existing task only. Just right click on it and click on execute in background. Or else you can open it and execute. You can see an option in the bottom. You can click on execute. Both will be fine. Task results. So refresh task will be taking some time. Why? Because it should refresh all the 230 identities. That is the reason. Click on this refresh button. It's done, right? You can open it and check it out. The results. 230 identities got successfully refreshed. Now, if you go to the identities and identity warehouse, you will be able to see the data. See, you will be able to see this data. So, for example, this person doesn't have a manager. What does this mean? Is like you can open any other identity. So you can see this manager. It's Douglas Floors. If you click on that manager, it will take you to that identity, Douglas Floors. If you now click on the Douglas Floors manager, Amanda Ross, it will take you to the Amanda Ross identity. So Amanda Ross manager is Jerry Bennett. If you click on Jerry Bennett, it will take you to Jerry Bennett identity. Jerry Bennett doesn't have a manager. What does this mean? He is a hierarchical person. So like that, you can understand the configuration. So this is how the data will be pulled. Now, some of you might have a question like, I can see only a few attributes. What happened to the remaining attributes? Can I see them also? Yes, you can see it. So for that, you need to make a UI configuration. So you can go to this debug pages. You can see another bookmark over here. Click on that. It will take you to the debug page. In that, you will be seeing a configuration options. Click on that. Click on UI configuration. This is a default UI screen only. On that, we are making some changes. There is a huge file. It will take some time to load. Yeah. So now in this, just give Control F, search for identity view attributes. Okay, this is the entry key. So here name, first name, last name, email, manager only. After manager, click on it, give a comma and add some more values like employee ID, EMP capital IND, next status, region, department, what else, inactive. Okay, these are all the names. If you have added some more attributes also, you can add those as well over here. Like
So we can add this only when we have added the attributes. It's not like that we add this line, we edit this line and it will take all the attributes.
No, for example, I have added location here. The location we have it mapped over there, right?
Yeah.
So if I save it, nothing. The location attribute only will not be shown.
Okay, we have to add it there, then only we can extend the commands here.
Right. So I'll show you now. So I have just added and saved that file, right? So now if I went to identity warehouse, if you open any identity, see, location attribute only is not showing, though we typed over because it is not mapped. Getting? And inactive field is empty. Empty means this identity is active, means true. Oh, sorry, false. If inactive is equal to true, if that identity is inactive state, it will be showing like inactive equal to true. The true value will be visible to you, but false value, it will not visible. It will represent as a blank value. Okay, remember this because this is very important in your real-time observation as well. That is what Sailpoint is being defined. So this is an active identity, which means inactive field will be false, but it will be shown like a blank field. So what is the debug page? Also, we'll be learning. So generally, debug page is a backend files of Sailpoint. Whatever that we are configuring on the UI. For example, this is an identity cube. Okay. So this is you are seeing on the UI screen in a very custom way, right? But when you go to the debug page and search for this particular entity, it will display like an XML file. If you want to check it out, just go to debug pages again. The same Adam Kennedy identity, search for the identity object, open this Adam Kennedy identity. So this is how Sailpoint understands in the back. Is that clear? So that is the intention or purpose of the debug page. If you want to change anything, you can comment on it. So this completes your authoritative application on